You've seen season 1 of the show, but do you want to know the entirety of Dunk and Egg's storyline straight from the books it's based on? We're here to break the whole thing down.
What? How would you know?
Be warned, spoilers ahead. Before we get into the weeds about Dunk and Egg specifically, we need to discuss House Targaryen and its line of succession when their story actually begins, which is in the neighborhood of 209 AC. Note that in the larger Game of Thrones universe, AC refers to after the conquest, specifically Aegon's conquest, which essentially created the continent we now know as Westeros. Though Daemon II Targaryen is king by the time Sir Duncan's story properly begins, he's the successor of Aegon IV Targaryen, and that guy is important. See, Egg's great-grandfather Aegon IV was kind of a huge jerk, and Daemon was the only one of his kids who routinely resisted some of his father's worst impulses. Because of this, Aegon started randomly musing about disowning Daemon entirely and ensuring that one of his many illegitimate children moved up in the line of succession. But when he died without managing to actually do that, Daemon became king. This wasn't easy though, thanks to a bastard named Daemon Blackfyre, who tried and failed to challenge his half-brother for the throne. Daemon lost and Daemon held on to the crown, but again, it's important to consider that the Targaryen line of succession was shaky at best around this time. Now we get to the beginning of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, where we watch as Dunk buries his former mentor, the hedge knight Ser Arlen of Pennytree. Like Ser Arlen, Dunk wants to be a hedge knight, which is essentially a knight who's not sworn to any one house, sort of like a freelance knight of some kind. As such, he hops on his loyal steed Thunder, grabs the other 2 horses and Ser Arlen's leftover weapons, and heads to Ashford, located in the region known as the Reach. In Ashford, Dunk hopes to enter a tournament, but in the meantime, he tries to fend off a young bald boy who introduces himself as Egg and hopes to be his squire.
Take me with you, sir. Please.
And what might your mother say to that?
Not much. She's dead.
Even though Dunk is determined to make it on his own, Egg ends up swaying him, and by the end of the show's pilot, the two are cozy by a campfire watching shooting stars, which Egg insists will bring good luck. Still, at this point, Dunk, who decides on the full name Sir Duncan the Tall for his hedge knighthood, has only agreed to let Egg work temporarily as a squire, giving the young boy a chance to prove himself. As Egg quietly tries to learn how to be a better squire, Dunk begrudgingly agrees to teach the young boy basic tasks like sewing and cooking. After failing to find someone to vouch for him so he can properly enter the tournament, Dunk befriends Lionel Baratheon, who isn't too convinced that he has any chance to win said tournament. Not long after, Dunk sneaks into Ashford's castle and overhears a conversation between high-ranking Targaryen princes. He intrudes on their meetup and introduces himself, which ultimately results in Prince Baelor Targaryen agreeing to vouch for him. However, he tells Dunk that he needs to get a shield with his own sigil on it, since he isn't a true-born son of Ser Arlen. Encouraged but nervous, Dunk asks a local artisan and puppeteer named Tanzel to paint a shield for him, a task she accepts even though Dunk is obviously infatuated with her and super awkward.
The boys used to call me Tanzel Too Tall.
You're not too tall. I mean, you're just right for...
Unfortunately, things go a bit sideways when Dunk royally ticks off Prince Aerys Targaryen, Egg's cruel brother. Note that at this point in the narrative, Dunk doesn't know Egg is a Targaryen at all. He just thinks he's a funny little bald kid named Egg. When Aerys sees a puppet show that depicts the Targaryen symbol of a dragon in a way he finds distasteful, he breaks Tanzel's fingers and Dunk comes to her rescue. Unfortunately for Dunk, rescuing Tanzel means beating up a Targaryen prince, and when Aerys gets his butt kicked, he wants Dunk to pay for his transgressions.
You've loosened one of my teeth. So we'll start by breaking out all of yours.
The only reason that Dunk isn't flayed on the spot is because Egg reveals that he's actually Aegon Targaryen and demands that Dunk's life be spared. The problem is that Aerys demands a trial of the Seven, forcing Dunk to assemble an army of 7 to fight against Aryans to prove his innocence. Though Egg's father, Maekar, offers his sword and shield to Aerys, Baelor switches camps and backs Dunk, only to be fatally wounded in the trial. Though Dunk emerges victorious, losing Baelor is a massive loss for the Targaryen family. And what it means is that Maekar, the younger brother of Baelor, is back in the royal line of succession. Remember how we said that the Targaryen dynasty is crucial to understanding Dunk and Egg's full story? Let's circle back to that. Sometime between 209 and 210 AC, a disease referred to in the books as the Great Spring Sickness came to Westeros, and it ravaged royals and peasants alike, including Daeron II Targaryen, ruler of the Seven Kingdoms. Because the sickness also kills Baelor's eldest sons and the heirs apparent, the princes Valar and Materys, Aerys I Targaryen takes the throne. How does Aerys I Targaryen do as king? After Daeron II, whose royal nickname was Daeron the Good, the standard was high, and Aerys was just sort of aloof and odd. What you really need to know about Aerys, though, is that his heirs keep dying on him. Aerys' brother Rhaegal and Rhaegal's kids, twins and lovers, Aelor and Aelora, all die before him, which means the throne passes to none other than Maekar, Aeg's dear old dad.
The realm has as many hedge knights as hedges.
So what are Dunk and Egg up to while Egg's uncle Aerys is running the Seven Kingdoms? The two travel away from Ashford, which we see in the finale of Season 1. Okay, here's where you should bail if you don't want any spoilers, because here they come. If the show follows the trajectory of Martin's books, they'll likely stay in the Reach, where they'll meet Ser Eustace Osgrey, to whom they pledge service. Alongside Eustace and his buddy Bennis of the Brown Shield, the gang positions themselves against Roanne Webber, the Lady of Colmote known as the Red Widow. Why? She's put a dam on their water supply from the Chequy River after Bennis was rude to her. The funniest possible thing does in fact happen here, which is that Dunk and Esquire Egg work really hard to broker an uneasy peace between Roanne and Eustace, and it actually works too well because the two end up getting married. Unfortunately for Dunk, who was grievously injured and nearly killed by Roanne's chosen champion Sir Lucas Inchfield, he's not super thrilled about this, since he fought an entire battle for Eustace against Roanne. But he accepts it, and he and Dunk keep traveling onwards to the Riverlands of Westeros. An ongoing theme by this point is that Dunk feels increasingly aligned with the Targaryen household despite still not officially declaring any sort of alliance as a knight. What happens in White Walls, though, changes everything. Basically, Dunk and Egg meet another hedge knight, John the Fiddler, who invites them to join him at the wedding between the Lord of White Walls, Ambrose Butterwell, to the daughter of Lord Frey of the Crossing. Not only that, but the wedding tourney offers the prize of a dragon egg, so Dunk gets on board. While he's there, though, Duncan does a major favor for House Targaryen when he sort of accidentally helps arrest Daemon Blackfyre, who's at the wedding, to try and start another Blackfyre Rebellion to take the throne from the Targaryens. The whole thing is wildly complicated, and John the Fiddler is essentially a bad guy, to sum it all up. Because Egg rings the alarm about the sheer number of Blackfyre allies at the wedding, Dunk, who enters the tourney as the Gallows Knight, ends up backing a fellow knight named Sir Glendon Ball, who defeats Daemon and also aids in his escape. This undeniably bonds Dunk to House Targaryen, and with Aegon on the cusp of becoming king himself, you can probably see where all of this is going. So how does Egg even become king in the first place? Well, when Maekar dies, his eldest son, Daeron, who's dead by this point, only has two small children unable to rule, and so a council approaches the aforementioned Aemon Targaryen, who becomes a maester at the Wall with the Night's Watch.
Love is the death of duty.
Aemon, as we know, turns the throne down and says it should go to his little brother Egg, earning King Aegon V Targaryen the pretty unflattering nickname Aegon the Unlikely. One of Aegon's first good moves as the new ruler of the Seven Kingdoms is that he makes Dunk a member of his Kingsguard, and ultimately Duncan rises through the ranks of the storied organization and becomes its Lord Commander. Aegon went on to have some royal sons, including a boy that Aegon named Duncan, presumably after his friend, who earned the nickname Duncan the Small. We learn this in A Storm of Swords, the third book in A Song of Ice and Fire. Aegon's rule went okay, all things considered. Though he was forced to quell a number of uprisings, he made sure that he kept the poorer denizens of Westeros well-fed whenever possible. So how did his reign end? In fire, which is honestly pretty on the nose for a Targaryen. In 2059 AC, Dunk and Egg are hanging out at Summerhall, a Targaryen palace located in a southern region of Westeros known as the Dornish Marches, when tragedy unexpectedly strikes. In the novellas, the context surrounding the fire at Summerhall is unfortunate, but clear. Aegon, who's having trouble dealing with lords that want him to prioritize their needs over those of the small folk, wants to try and raise dragons from the proverbial dead to put more power and weight behind his rule as king. As he tries to put dragon eggs into a fire and get them to hatch, the palace catches fire, and Egg, Dunk, and Prince Duncan Targaryen all die. Or do they? In a video interview with Decider, Dexter Sol Ansel got just a bit ahead of himself and may have shared information that he says was provided by Martin himself that's not yet public knowledge at all, or potentially not true. He told the interviewer,
I do know a bit about when Egg's trying to make dragons.
Peter Claffey, who was sitting alongside Ansel for the interview, tried to interject by saying they don't really know what's coming, but Ansel forged ahead.
We know Dunk survives, but we don't know if Egg survives yet.
Again, we have no idea if that's true, but it definitely plants a big seed of doubt about how the tragedy of Summerhall turns out. The best part about A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is its future trajectory. The show is set to return for a second season in 2027 based on A Sworn Sword, and showrunner Ira Parker has an amazing idea for an even more involved future. As he told The Wrap, he wants to mimic the way Richard Linklater shot Boyhood, meaning that he returns to this story over the years and lets the actors age along with it. As he said, I would love to make 12 of these. I'd like to do 4 with Aeg the boy, 4 with Aeg the prince, and 4 with Aeg the king, but do them every 10 years. So do a pocket, Peter and Dexter can go off, have their careers, everybody goes, and then in 10 years we'll come back and we'll do another 4 of these. Though Parker said he also worried that the show might not get this opportunity, he's fine with that. So far, the show is great, and Parker's plan sounds phenomenal. We'll just have to wait and see if it all works out in the end.